So this person has an order of removal. He's seen 2 different immigration judges, and he's been ordered deported. And that's exactly what happened.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that withholding removal order essentially said the one place he can't go is El Salvador, where he's from. He claimed that he was concerned he could be persecuted if he was returned. Why not simply have him return to the U.S., detain him, and then deport him to a third country? Wouldn't that be in accordance with the law?
In today's video, Kaitlan Collins corners and presses Tom Homan on CNN's The Source. Tom Homan argues the administration acted within its authority, saying the deportation was justified because of national security concerns and changing conditions in the country the individual was sent to. But Kaitlan presses on a key issue. If a judge had already issued an order blocking that deportation, how exactly did the government move forward anyway? That's where the debate really heats up, because this isn't just about one person's immigration case, it's about whether the executive branch can override court rulings when it decides someone is a security threat. So let's dive in and watch how Kaitlan Collins destroys Tom Homan on CNN's The Source.
And Siri, you're not ultimately worried here that anyone will be held in contempt or anything like that as they continue this fact-finding investigation overall on this effort?
No, I'm not concerned about it. I mean, fact find all they want. I think the evidence is clear. I think DOJ's made a strong case, and we'll let it play out in court. I mean, as I sit here today talking to you, I don't think anybody in the administration did anything wrong. I don't think we've actually violated a court order.
So we have 2 judges here. That's Judge Boasberg's ruling that we found yesterday that the president was asked about. The other judge here, the federal judge in Maryland, Judge Zinnes, has been criticizing the government this week for what she says is doing, quote, nothing to return Kilmar Abrego Garcia to the United States. Are you personally aware of any steps that have been taken to facilitate his return to the United States?
Look, I think he's a citizen of El Salvador. He's in El Salvador. He's home. He's an illegal alien with a final order of removal. He's a MS-13 member, which is now classified as a terrorist. So we removed an illegal alien, MS-13 member, who has a final order of removal issued by an immigration judge to his homeland.
So should I read that as to say nothing has been done to bring him back to the United States? That's what it sounds like.
I can't speak to everybody in the administration. I can just tell you what my stance is, and I think we did the right thing. I think he's where he should be, and the order of withholding that everybody keeps talking about, order of withholding is you set aside because he's a designated terrorist, which order of withholding is meaningless, I believe, according to the attorneys. And look, even if he came back, people think he's going to be released and go back to, no, he's going to be detained. And he's going to be removed as per the order of removal, either to El Salvador or another country. So this person has an order of removal. He's seen 2 different immigration judges, and he's been ordered deported. And that's exactly what happened.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that withholding removal order essentially said the one place he can't go is El Salvador, where he's from. He claimed that he was concerned he could be persecuted if he was returned. Why not simply have him return to the U.S., detain him, and then deport him to a third country? Wouldn't that be in accordance with the law?
I think we're in accordance with the law. I mean, I'm not an attorney. I'm not DOJ fighting this case. But my opinion, in the years I spent doing this job, he is now designated a terrorist. The withholding orders is set aside. And we got to remember, the withholding order was issued years ago. Things have changed. El Salvador is one of the safest countries in the region because of the steps President Bukele take. You know, the gangs are no longer operating on the streets of Venezuela, in El Salvador. That's why he built that prison. So I don't think the gang danger that they once thought was there is even there anymore. So the situation has changed. It's much like temporary protection status, the TPS. That's only temporary. When the conditions in the country have changed, TPS can be ended and they can be removed to the country.
But why not make that argument in court? If you think that you can make the argument that he is fine to go back to El Salvador, why not just make that argument and try to terminate that order that said that the one place he couldn't go to was the one place that he was sent to?
Now, in immigration law, something like a withholding of removal order is not just a suggestion from a judge, it's a binding protection under US law that comes from international agreements the United States signed after World War II. The principle is called non-refoulement, which basically means you can't send someone back to a country where they are likely to face persecution or harm. Even if someone is deportable, the law still requires the government to send send them somewhere safe. That's why the normal procedure, if the government believes circumstances have changed, is to go back to court and ask a judge to modify or terminate that protection. Immigration courts do this all the time. The Department of Homeland Security can present evidence that conditions in a country have improved or that new information about a person has emerged. But the key thing is that it happens through the legal process, not outside of it. There's also another piece that often gets overlooked. Terrorism designations aren't made casually in immigration cases. When someone is labeled a member of a terrorist organization or gang, those claims usually have to be supported with evidence that can stand up in court. Over the years, federal courts have repeatedly ruled that immigration authorities can't rely solely on vague intelligence or unverified accusations when someone's legal protections are involved. And the reason these procedural details matter is because immigration enforcement already has enormous power. Immigration courts are administrative courts, not the same as criminal courts, and the standard of proof can be different.
Look, again, I'm not litigating this case to the DOJ. I think DOJ's continue to litigate the case, but I think we're in a good stance. I think we're in a good place. Again, I'm not an attorney. I can just speak to my experience as a guy who enforces immigration law, but I think that DOJ has a strong case, and I think we're standing by what we did was the correct thing to do.
Has the Attorney General Pam Bondi, to your knowledge, attempted to revise that withholding removal order?
I have not spoken to Pam Bondi about this.
You mentioned the Justice Department. One thing that has been on my mind as we've been covering this is President Trump was in office in 2019 when an immigration judge granted this withholding removal status to Abrego Garcia. It was the Trump Justice Department then that decided not to appeal it or fight it. Do you believe that they should have here?
Well, the conditions of the country are different now than they were back then. Maybe the condition of the country is one that the withholding made sense. I mean, I wasn't familiar with the case back in the first administration, but a lot of things could have changed since then. The condition of the country could change. The ruling could change. The facts of the case could change. I'm not familiar on the investigation, the removal from back in the Trump 45, but I'm sure DOJ is well aware of it, and they're litigating it as they seem appropriate.
But are they litigating it? Because what we heard from the Attorney General essentially the other day was that it's out of their hands to have him return to the United States, that it's up to the president of El Salvador.
Well, that's a question for Pam Bondi. The DOJ has their mission. I have my mission. That's a question for her.
But you are someone who's worked in immigration for decades, and you have a view here that you believe that this was the right move ultimately to have him sent here. But wouldn't the proper stance here essentially be to contest this in court, to try to terminate that order and then have him sent, and then you wouldn't be in the middle of this massive legal fight that is playing out over where the administration's right is here and whether or not they violated a court order?
I don't think they violated court order. I think we did the right thing, and I think it's been litigated by DOJ, and I'll let them fight that out in court or not fight out in court. But I think we did the right thing. As far as what we should do next in judicial process or litigation, I'll leave it up to DOJ. That's their job.
But of course, you are someone who is at the center of the immigration fight and deporting people who are here illegally. This one individual.
How's that the center of the immigration fight and all these? It's just, Kaitlan, no one asks these questions about the proper vetting of the millions of people the Biden administration pushed across the border, at least in this country illegally. No one's concerned about the vetting then. All of a sudden now everybody wants to be concerned about the vetting of people that even be deported. I mean, it seems like a one-side show, but I stand by the fact that I think things were done right with his case. He's an MS-13 gang member. He has a final order of removal. He is a designated terrorist, and he's back in El Salvador, his homeland. And anything beyond that, we'll let the courts settle on it.
What really stands out in this exchange is that the debate isn't just about immigration enforcement. It's about whether the government followed the legal process that already existed. Because when people hear final order of removal, it sounds like the case is completely settled. But immigration law is actually more complicated than that. A withholding of removal order specifically blocks deportation to a certain country if a judge determines there's a credible risk of persecution or harm there. Even if someone is deportable, the government still has to respect that protection unless it goes back to court and gets the order lifted. And that's not some obscure technicality. It's rooted in international agreements the US signed decades ago after World War II. The principle is called non-refoulement, which basically means governments can't send people back to places where they face serious danger. US courts have consistently treated that rule as binding. Another thing Kaitlan's questions highlight is the timeline. The protection in this case wasn't granted under a different administration that the government had no involvement in. It happened during Trump's first term, and the Justice Department at the time had the opportunity to appeal it and didn't. That matters because it shows the government already had a chance to challenge the ruling through the legal system if it believed the judge was wrong. And if officials believe conditions in a country have improved, there's actually a standard process for that. The government can file a motion to reopen or terminate the order in immigration court and present evidence that the original risk no longer exists.
You say everything was done right here. And I heard Stephen Miller in the Oval Office on Monday also arguing that he was lawfully deported. But this administration has admitted in court that he was mistakenly deported, that he should not have been deported.
Look, they say there's administrative error, but if you look at the case, if I look at the case as a non-attorney, just an enforcement officer, I think things were done right. Again, they're talking about, well, it might have been a paper error about the withholding. But if we look at the case and he's designated terrorist, I think that withholding has been set aside. That is my opinion. But again, we'll let DOJ fight it out.
Well, I mean, the Solicitor General, it was the third in the chain of command at the DOJ, has said that this was an error.
Then I'll let them deal with it. I'm giving you my opinion. I said I'm not going to get in the middle of what DOJ is arguing in court. I'm telling you, from my stance, what we've done, I believe, is correct, and that's why DOJ is standing by the fact that what we did was right.
You know, I've seen some people look at this and say they're worried that the stance of this administration when it comes to this is that if someone is deported by accident, that they have no responsibility for them once they are in the custody of a foreign government. What would you say to that?
Well, they're in the custody of El Salvador. He's an El Salvadoran national. He was born in El Salvador. El Salvador has him in custody, and El Salvador decide what happened to him. I mean, again, the El Salvadoran president made it clear he's not going to release him. So again, I'm going to go back. The DOJ, they can fight this out in the courts. As I'm not a part of that. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a prosecutor. So we'll let the courts, decide what the next steps will be.
Even though it was a U.S. immigration judge who said the one place he can't go is El Salvador. I mean, he could have been deported literally anywhere else.
Again, we can keep going back and back, but again, that was years ago. Country conditions were different. That gang no longer exists in El Salvador. He had been designated a terrorist since that time. 2 different federal judges said he's an MS-13 member. A police department said he's an MS-13 member. ICE data shows he's an MS-13 member. El Salvador says he's an MS-13 member. As you know, MS-13 has been designated terrorist. The case has the facts of the case have changed since that first decision. So again, I'll leave it up to the DOJ to argue that case in court, but that is where I stand, and that's my belief.
When the Solicitor General, one of the highest-ranking lawyers in the Department of Justice, tells a judge that a deportation happened because of an administrative error, that's not just a casual statement. It's a formal admission made in a federal courtroom, and those carry a lot of weight legally. And that's where the process side of this gets really important. Immigration law actually has clear procedures for situations where the government makes a mistake. Courts have repeatedly ruled that if someone is wrongfully removed, the government still has an obligation to attempt to correct that error, even if the person is already outside the United States. There have been several cases where federal judges ordered agencies to work with foreign governments to facilitate someone's return specifically because the removal violated an existing legal protection. Another piece that matters here is the withholding of the removal order itself. Those orders aren't temporary suggestions. They're issued after a judge determines that someone could face persecution or harm if sent to a particular country. Even if someone is deportable, the government is legally required to send them somewhere else if that order is in place. If officials believe conditions in that country have changed, the normal process is to go back to immigration court and ask a judge to lift the order. That step is important because it keeps the executive branch from unilaterally overriding judicial decisions. There's also the claim about gang affiliation and terrorism designations. In immigration cases, courts have repeatedly said that those labels still need supporting evidence that can stand up to legal scrutiny. Simply labeling someone a gang member or terrorist doesn't automatically erase existing legal protections unless a judge reviews that evidence and rules accordingly.
Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.